Hi everyone, my name's Alex Wise and today I'm going to walk you through an image that I took at Pimba, South Australia. Look, it was an interesting part of the world in terms of probably about 3 to 4 hours out from civilization, very dark skies and just pure silence. It was bliss, but also a bit eerie in a sense. We spent the night here on the Salt Flats. We had a really cool camping spot, which I've got on my blog post here. As you can tell, it's pretty raw, but at the same time, just an awesome place to be. Um, I, on these kind of trips, I like to experiment with concepts, if you'd like. They don't always come off. I'm pretty happy with how this one came out. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but at the same time, I was pretty keen to walk people through it just in case there was any feedback people might have. Always keen to hear what kind of, I guess, thoughts people have, whether they sort of think, hey, maybe you should have put the Milky Way on a different axis or whatnot. So really that's the purpose of this video and post. So let's start. This is the final image, as you can see. Basically me sitting under a tree on a hammock with the Milky Way above. Just for any doubters, we actually did use the hammock when we arrived. We had a few hours to kill before sunset, so it was pretty nice just sitting back, with a beer in hand, I won't lie, and just enjoying the sunset because there wasn't too much to do on the Salt Flats during the day, and boy, was it hot. So let's have a look at the image, but first, I want to walk you through all the different bracketed images that I use for this shot. I photograph with a Canon 5D Mark II, which, due to its age, it struggles a bit in low light, and for that reason, I fired off a lot of photos for this final image. The reason being is I really want to draw dynamic range and I guess different shutter speeds for the frame from various different photos. I feel as if I was to use one or two images and then lift the shadows or highlights, it would have just gone crazy with the noise. So if we sort of take a look at the images I photographed, this one of me sitting underneath the tree, this one, essentially formed the base image. The base image does have its flaws, however, in terms of there's a car here to the left of the frame. The tree itself is lacking dynamic range. The fire looks not too bad, but I wanted to add a bit of a flare. And then there's absolutely nothing in the sky, just because I very much have taken a short exposure for myself and the fairy lights. So this is where you bring in some of the other frames taken for this photo, with one of the key ones being this one. Oh, excuse the dogs in the background. I'm just at my in-laws this weekend and hiding out in a spare bedroom trying to record this. So we've got this one, which is probably the second most important photo that I took as part of this composite. This is just a base exposure of the sky, and the key here was, because I was later combining a Milky Way, I needed a shot of the stars which was a similar colour and dynamic range level to the Milky Way shot that I'd later combine, being this one. On top of this, I also took another couple of exposures, mostly around some short bursts of the fire, which I thought I may have used in the final image, just to sort of get more of a natural feel to the fire rather than it being a big flare. I ended up using a big flare rather than a short burst, just because I like the effect it brought to the image. So, as you can tell, quite a fair few different photos used. I'm still kicking myself for accidentally including the car in the photo, but what can you do? So what we'll do, let's take a bit of a look at the final image just to walk you through how it all came together. So this is the final image of me sitting under the tree with the fairy lights on and the fire just going mental in the front. So just going to dial back the different layers that have been enabled and created, and this basically is our, I guess if you'd like to call it, base image. Let's start by introducing some changes to the fire. Basically the key here was just to really bring out a bit of a flare effect to the fire. In doing so, it then brings out some detail to the Salt Flats, which is just to the right of the frame. I then enabled the Milky Way layer, which, yes, it is a composite taken from earlier in the evening. The reason being was we'd been shooting the Milky Way for a few hours, so it unfortunately moved. We did plan this shot earlier in the evening, but yep, we actually didn't plan for the fact that the Milky Way does move. quite a simple one. And we should have known better. But look, it was probably only just a bit to the right of the frame, so it wasn't a hard one to move over, but at the same time, not ideal. It would have been nice to get it in one shot, but it did cause a lot of frustration and pain trying to Photoshop it in, which may or may not have been due to my Photoshop skills. So just going to quickly walk you through the Milky Way with some quick enabling of these layers. So this is the Milky Way, and then we turn on a curves, which is more of a bit of a color adjustment to it to make it a bit more blue, and then another one to bring out the dynamic range of the Milky Way. So just going to walk those back again, and let's just zoom in a bit actually. As you can see, that just gives it a bit of a pop of blue rather than looking a bit grey. Look, I think that's personal preference. I personally prefer the blue effect, but then I've seen others that opt for the more grey effect. And look, I think both look great. It just comes down to personal preference. And then another curves layer, which for the most part was about bringing around the dynamic range of this part of the Milky Way. Lastly is a really, really faint curves adjustment, which you won't be able to see in this tutorial, and really what it was to do was just to bring out some of the dynamic range and exposure in the top right hand of the frame, which was a bit faint, but look, not too visible for the purpose of this tutorial. So really there you have it. I realise that it probably is a bit overboard in terms of the amount of images that have been photographed, but yeah, the Canon 5D Mark II, it's a bit of a temperamental beast. In terms of, if I was trying to pull shadows from this sand, it just goes nuts with the noise. So by having a fair few different exposures at different lengths, different ISOs, because look, shooting at 3200, it's pretty ugly. So just having all these exposures up my sleeve and be able to conveniently drop them in worked wonders. I'd love to get one of the new Sonys now after shooting this shot. I feel as if whilst I probably still would have had to bracket a few images for the different shutter speeds, I just would have probably not had the same issues that I had with noise as I did with this image. So that covers it off. If you have any questions after reading this post, apologies, it's a bit long-winded. Feel free to drop a line. Always happy to help and walk you through some of the madness behind my before and after series. Thanks very much for watching. Really appreciate it. Bye.